Good morning from England to wherever you are. I hope you can hear me. Am I coming through loud and clear? Maybe I am. Hopefully I am. I can check. It seems to be working. There's numbers. There's little green bars. I think that's a good sign. A green light. We are good to go. So, thank God you arrived. Welcome to the party. Hold on to your butts. This is HEYS Reviews Lives, episode number 9, Unsustainable, Elopement. Hello. Good morning. I'm Nick, creator of HEYS Reviews, and this is my 9th live stream in the HEYS Reviews Lives series. In these episodes, what I'm trying to do is connect some dots from the micro to the macro. We're going to start with some headlines, look at some mainstream news stories, and then we're going to connect that to the bigger picture of things, what are going on with some history, with some non-mainstream news and resources that don't get a lot of airtime through the usual avenues of information dissemination. I've got an absolutely packed show today with all sorts of different things to get through. And so we're going to jump right in and start analyzing some articles and looking at the headlines. The whole topic today, I've named it Unsustainable Elopement. It's kind of a play on the sustainable development phrase. And that's a really big issue at the moment, as many people will know, if you pay attention to anything whatsoever. If you have a job in corporate world, for example, if you watch mainstream media, if you pay attention to the big events that the world's so-called elite fly around to meet each other and talk to each other in order to solve the world's problems, because they're so kind and philanthropic and loving and caring, and they just want to make everything better for everybody who isn't them. And of course, I'm being facetious. It's exactly the opposite. They want to make everything better for themselves and ruin everything for everyone else in the process, which is what we're going to discover today. But climate change is a huge issue. It used to be global warming, or it used to be global cooling, then it was global warming, then it was acid rain. Now it's climate change. Next it's going to be global warming, cooling, climate change. They just keep rebranding it and rolling it out and rebranding it and rolling it out. And anyone with any kind of memory should be able to see that it keeps morphing. New words and different buzzwords keep getting shoved in our faces. And the latest one is net zero. And this is they want to bring down they call it net zero carbon. So they want to get rid of the carbon. Well, good luck with that, because we are carbon-based life forms, and that is what all of the life forms are at this stage. So, it's kind of saying it out in the open what they want to do when they say they want to get rid of carbon and bring that down to zero. So this agenda is going on. We've all had some exposure to it, and the purpose of today's episode is to have a look at the latest developments and to give you some other resources to help you understand parts of this issue that are usually occulted, which just means hidden, or neglected, as in the neglected aspect fallacy, meaning they're just left out altogether, and you're given an incomplete picture of what's going on in order to sort of corral your behaviors and control and manipulate your worldview, so that you make lots of sacrifices and you put up with lots of things that you wouldn't do if you were fully informed and had fully informed consent around this whole topic. So, without any more preamble and rambling from me, let's dive straight into the articles. So this is the first one I got. This is from Telegraph. Don't forget, UK News Website of the Year. And this article is all about "We can't go uphill. The 20 mile per hour speed limit makes no sense." So this is in Wales, and there's a Labour government in Wales. And they've enforced a 20 mile an hour speed limit. And of course, if you know anything about Wales, you'll know it's nothing if not hilly. And so this article is about how one of the steepest roads in Rhondda Valley, traffic is moving at a snail's pace. Like, if you drive cars, you probably know that you need to get a good clip going, a good bit of speed and a good bit of power if you want to get up hills, particularly if you're driving like older vehicles. And forcing everybody to slow down is causing a bit of chaos. So what the article says: drivers here have not slowed down to admire the sweeping valleys of Wales' former coal mines, but are doing their utmost to conform to the new national speed limit of 20 miles an hour in a spot where vehicles would ordinarily need to go much faster. So there's hundreds of speed cameras been put out, and to control these 20-mile-an-hour zones. And it's a blanket policy that's caused crippling delays and could cost the Welsh economy 4.5 billion. As the article says, it defies common sense. We've got an interview with Daryl Ingram, who visits his daughter, saying, "You put it in a lower gear and you're causing more pollution by driving slower. We're supposed to be fighting against that." Yes, well, it's not about pollution, is it, Daryl? The newly erected speed signs have been defaced using spray paint by vigilantes who were opposed to First Minister Mark Drayford's controversial 20-mile-per-hour speed scheme. So this is kind of the pushback. This has been happening in London as well, where there's been some ULEZ cameras broken and smashed up and taken down. So people are kind of really disgusted and frustrated by these measures. And I think they realize that it's not about protecting them or helping them or doing anything for them, right? So one of the problems that's arising out of this 20-mile-per-hour zone is medication is not getting delivered on time. So there's delays to the number of prescriptions the pharmacy is now able to deliver in a given day. They used to do 30, now it's down to 20. So bad luck to you if you're sitting at home waiting for your medication delivery. Although, with the way medication is these days, they might be doing you a favor there by not getting it to you. But I think it can't be said. In all cases, some people are very dependent on medication and they need it to function. If you're sitting at home waiting for it and they can't get to you because of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, then that is kind of tragic. And again, it's clearly an attack on the most sort of needy and vulnerable members of society, like all these things are. So 32 million was spent by Wales devolved administration to lower the speed limit, it's astounding, really, isn't it? Like, how can lowering a speed limit cost £32 million? That's just unbelievable. But that's what it's all about. It's taking money off you, collecting it under threat of violence and imprisonment, and then just doling it out on whatever and schemes or crackpot ideas that they deem to be necessary. And this is all just a fake justification of why they need to steal your money. So there was a calculation. Yeah, so this is how they worked out. This is how they worked out the benefits of this move. So there was a 1-minute calculation, which was arrived at by dividing 1 billion additional minutes spent on Welsh roads due to the lower speed limit by just over 1 billion car journeys made in the country every year. So what they said was this is only going to add 1 minute to journey times. And that's how they worked it out. So so they've lowered the speed limit by 10 miles an hour. I mean, it's miles an hour, right? So if you're gonna knock a third off the speed limit, and then they say it's only gonna shorten journeys by 1 minute. I mean, that is just dumb on the face of it, but that is what they're trying to tell you. And there's also a story here about a woman who can't travel very far with her rare sheep. And this is Wales after all, so they did have to get something in there about sheep, right? But the ministers are eyeing a ULEZ-style powers in Wales, so it could be the first country in the UK to implement ULEZ-style restrictions on vehicles outside of towns and cities, and has already led the way in reducing the default national speed limit, which remains 30 miles per hour everywhere else in Britain. So they're leading the way. They are at the forefront of health and convenience and care and love for their population. That is one of the signs that's been vandalised. And the drivers, if they roll out this ULEZ in Wales, they're going to have to spend £8 per day to drive in the zones. So not only are they going to be facing more fines, they're going to be having to pay every day £8. I mean, imagine if you go to work, that's going to add up over the year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, the lifetime of your career. But the whole point is to just put people off driving altogether. They want people sitting at home. They want people being atomized and isolated from each other and not going out and making friends and building community and building trust in order to and exchanging ideas about what's going on and how best to maneuver and face it. They do not want people doing that. So it's a pretty interesting article. 20 miles an hour speed limit coming to a town near you soon. Next, so we're starting with the theme of travel today. That's what the first few articles are all about. They're all about travel, and this is from CNN, which is an American mainstream news outlet. It's time to limit how often we can travel abroad. Carbon passports may be the answer. Now, pretty much in all these kind of things, whenever they say may, what they're saying is this is what we're going to do by hook or by crook, and you can expect that this is going to get rolled out. Sometimes, though, I suppose they say may because they're just trying to test the waters to see what the pushback is. They'll gauge the reaction, how many people share it, what's the outrage. Because these days you can gather all that in real time. They can put an article out, and then within an hour or two, just by using software to analyze the comments and who shared it, they'll get a sense of people's sort of feelings about it. But I think in many cases, when they say this may be the answer, they're saying this is the answer this is the solution we've planned to the problem we've created. So the editors, although there's obviously been some pushback on this one because the editors felt the need to make a note saying the views expressed in this commentary are solely those of the writer. So they're putting a bit of distance between themselves and the writer here. And interestingly, I just noticed on this picture of the airport, you got a checkerboard floor right there. I don't know where this picture's from, but a checkerboard floor, interesting symbol, pops up all over the place. I won't dive into it here because that's not what this show is about. But yeah, just something that caught my eye now. So the conversation. The summer of 2023 was very significant for the travel industry. By the end of July, international tourist arrivals globally reached 84% of pre-pandemic levels. So you would think this is a good thing. Many places around the world, they rely on the money from tourists. They rely on that income, hotels, restaurants, shopping, visiting, different entertainment. It's a huge source of cash, and it's one of the things that keeps economies going all over the place. And so it should be good news, but no, this is not good news. It says it may be great news economically, but there's a concern that a return to the status quo is already showing dire environmental and social consequences. Yes, you. Stop going on holiday. Stop driving your car around. Stay at home. Why don't you just die? In fact, why don't you just stop breathing altogether? And that's foreshadowing a story that I've got coming up later in this episode, which was just released yesterday, but just crazy stuff. So experts attributed these extreme conditions to climate change. Of course, this is to do with record-breaking heat waves and wildfires, which, as we all know, human beings never stop wildfires. They never stop fires. It's never down to us, is it? It's always down to the weather. Tourism is part of the problem. So CNN's telling you right there, you need to stop having holidays. You need to stop traveling around. Because you, by having holidays and having a break and seeing other parts of the world and experiencing other cultures and exposing yourself to other people and the way they live and speak and building that worldly awareness for yourself, that's part of the problem. You're generating around 1/10 of the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving the climate crisis. So we're not allowed to drive our cars because we're driving the climate crisis instead. So yeah, tourism is a problem. We got to get rid of it. How do we do that? Carbon passport. The idea of a carbon passport centers on each traveler being assigned a yearly carbon allowance that they cannot exceed. These allowances can then ration travel. All right, so who's going to be in charge of assigning your yearly carbon allowance exactly? Well, the article doesn't say, but I'm sure we can guess. And who's this going to affect? Well, it's going to affect people who can't pay the fines to get an extended or an increased carbon allowance. It's going to affect poor people disproportionately, as these measures always, in fact, do. They're designed by wealthy people who live kind of a parallel life alongside the normal system the rest of us live in. They are cushioned by a sort of privilege and luxury. And I'm not blaming rich people or wealthy people. What I'm saying is there's kind of a parallel society of people who bring in these measures and who aren't affected by them. And they kind of also brainwash and mind control a bunch of people to cheering for these things, right? So there'll be a bunch of people, probably maybe young people, maybe sort of middle class, comfortable people, or older middle class people maybe who've had lots of holidays and done lots of traveling. Like, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing they're doing this because I've done all my traveling now. I've seen everything I want to see. I'm just happy to sit at home and wait out the rest of my life doing nothing. So yeah, let's restrict travel. Let's restrict the ability for young people and lower income people to get around and see the world, which, you know, is arguably one of the most valuable things you could possibly do with your life. They want to get rid of it. So there's a little thing here talking about carbon footprint. And then what they're saying is the average annual carbon footprint for a person in the US is 16 tons. In the UK, this is 11.7 tons, which is still more than 5 times the figure recommended by the Paris Agreement to keep global temperatures below 1.5 Celsius. So what do they want to do? Globally, the average annual carbon footprint is close to 4 tons, but even that's not enough. The average carbon footprint needs to drop to under 2 tons by 2050. So if you're in America or a UK or the kind of Western developed world, then they're coming after you and your carbon footprint and your travel, and they want to knock it down from 16 tons to 2 tons and from 11.7 to 2 tons. So you can imagine how much traveling you're going to be doing, and you can see that there's an attack on both driving cars and using planes to get around and to do stuff that you used to do. But, don't worry about it, because you want it. Because in 2021, a YouGov poll found that 70% of Germans would support such measures. Of course they would. This is everyone's on board with this. The consensus is that this needs to be done. And that is probably a lot of bullshit. Who are they asking? They probably pick their sample size very selectively and carefully. People who are already predisposed to think in this way. They've already been exposed to lots of climate change propaganda. They're probably vegans. They're probably Gaia worshipping hippies with no children, and so therefore they're easier to corral into this way of thinking that everything that we enjoy in the Western developed nations needs to be curtailed, because we are the bad guys and we need to hate ourselves and we need to bring ourselves and our standard of living down as far as we possibly can to save the world. So The Guardian, this reporting in the UK, a part of this effort to save the world by ruining our lives is to prevent us buying SUVs. So Toyota SUV adverts are banned in the UK on environmental grounds. So this is the first time this has happened. And the problem is that this Toyota adverts have been created without a sense of responsibility to society. This is the first time the Advertising Standards Authority has blocked an SUV advert on the grounds of breaching social responsibility in an environmental context. So it's setting the precedent, and pretty soon, where does it stop? As with all of these things, where's it going to stop? It's going to keep rolling out, and this precedent will now be, well, we have to keep doing it. And we'll extend the powers and extend the ability to do this to the point where, if you're sitting in your car and you're making a video to put on Facebook and your car happens to be a petrol guzzling SUV, they'll be like, you can't share that. you can't show any footage of cars. They're trying to get rid of cars, is my point. So this is but this is all to do with social responsibility, for the greater good. Social responsibility, you have a responsibility to the community. It's communitarianism. The complaint was lodged by Ad Free Cities, a network of pussies trying to get advertisement out of public spaces. No, actually, I agree with them. I'll take that back. I'm not calling. I'm gonna rescind my comment there. I actually think it would be good to get advertising out of public spaces. But the problem with no advertising in public spaces is then you're not living in a place where business happens. You're living in a different society. If companies aren't able to advertise to you, then but it's only public space, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know. I should think about that a little more. Actually, I think public spaces would be better without advertisements. You can get your advertisements online, like through your social media accounts and your ads on videos and this kind of thing. Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna do a quick 180 and edit myself and say maybe these guys are not so bad after all. But they're arguing that in partnership with the UK campaign group Badvertising, that's good, that the adverts condoned environmentally harmful behavior. So they are kind of hand-wringing, sort of wimps, aren't they? They're calling for an end to advertising of high-carbon products and services. So if you end the advertising of the high-carbon products and services, then you end people's awareness of those things, which reduces the use of them, which gets rid of them altogether, right? So they're coming after, as we've seen, cars, planes and air travel, and we'll see a little bit later they're coming after meat as well. Advertising for SUVs is pushing up demand for massive gas-guzzling, highly polluting cars in urban environments. Yep, that's what advertising does. It raises demand. And just when we want streets that are safer and cleaner and accessible, low-carbon transport system. And there it is. Wignall said, adding that the situation was similar for flights, meat, and dairy. Right? So no meat, no flights, no cars, and no milk. She called for the government to have a tobacco-style ban on high-carbon advertising. Similarly, the climate breakdown is increasingly damaging health in the UK, source, as well as obviously across the world, where impacts are felt more severely. Again, no source or information on that, just a statement about this is happening, don't you know? Obviously, everyone knows. Everyone agrees. Every scientist agrees. There's a consensus, and that's what's important here. Emphasis on the syllable con. The spokesperson said footage in the advert had been shot on private land abroad, a non-UK location, with permission and in a non-ecologically sensitive environment, adding that the poster ad used computer-generated imagery and so had no environmental impact. Yeah. So they're coming after your cars. And they're trying to make driving as miserable as possible. They recently changed the rules here on driving so that people are kind of more confused about the right of way they have when it comes to pedestrians and dealing with cyclists. And so it's all coming. It's all happening. And they just really want everybody having a miserable time of it, sitting at home watching the world burn, even though that's not what's happening. So the next thing I have for you here is a video that I came across. This is Jeff Buys Cars. It's not a YouTuber I've ever checked out or listened to before, but it's a 12-minute video. I won't play the whole thing. I'll just give you a snippet of the intro here. And I guess this guy, I've only watched this one video of his, but it seems what he does, he's a car enthusiast, buys and fixes up classic cars. And so he's been made aware of some information from a car insurance provider. And I'll let him do a little intro for you here.
Good morning, something a little different today. I'm not in the car because it's a beautiful day. It was minus 5.5 earlier on, up to about minus 3 now. Why am I not in the car? Well, firstly, because it's beautiful. Secondly, because if any of this is got any modicum of truth in it, then we're not going to be in our cars anyway. So I thought I'd pick a beautiful scene to present a very not beautiful video. This has done the rounds on YouTube. I'm going to read a transcript because previously it was a European version. I've put it into English speak. I'm going to read it and then just tell me what you think in the comments and then we'll call it a day. No more dark videos for today. 1st of December, happy December, blue skies, first time in ages. Let's take a look at this. I'll title this, They Are Coming for Your Car. Here is the entire message in English. I work in the IT department of a very large, renowned insurance company headquartered in Germany. Unfortunately, what I tell my circle of friends and relatives about my projects, they dismiss as conspiracy theory.
Have you heard of the term
And we'll leave it there. Yes, so the video goes on and he reads this whole statement about how they're going to stop insuring cars which aren't environmentally friendly. Just like they're going to ban advertising for things that aren't deemed correct and in line with the message. The message being that human beings are destroying the world and we have to go back to living in mud huts and eating bugs. Not go back to eating. I don't think we ever ate bugs. I know certain places do it where they're really desperate for food, but it's definitely not a key staple part of our diet that has helped us thrive and survive this whole time. Excuse me. Well, that took me by surprise. Sorry about that. So the rest of that video, he reads the whole statement, and he's just explaining how this is going to be rolled out. So all well and good. You might want to buy it. You can buy your classic car, and you can have that sitting on the drive. But if you can't insure it, then you're not going to be allowed to drive it anywhere, and it's going to be totally worthless. There's going to be no point in having it. And you can tell that this is how these things, it's going to be kind of brought in by the bureaucratic rules that are put in place. So that it's like, well, we're not banning petrol and diesel cars, but we're just making it impossible and expensive for you to use one. You know, but it's up to you. If you want to use one, you can by paying this extra thing and getting this extra license and paying off this carbon tax and paying these fines and paying to enter and paying. And you can see it going on like this, again, disproportionately affecting lower income people and poorer people who rely on their older vehicles to get around. Nope, not you. You are not allowed to have a car to get around, to earn a living or to live your life unless you pay with the money you don't have. All right, so this is Zero Hedge, and this is an article by Tyler Durden, and this is, again, about the personal carbon allowance. Your travel will be restricted by personal carbon allowances. Again, it's experts, all these experts. Experts that are bought and paid for by the people who are profiting from rolling out this agenda, I might add. So they're suggesting your standard of living will be reduced by over 85%. Obviously, this is not everywhere. This is just in certain places in the world, mainly English speaking, mainly European and North American. A report on the future of travel and tourism, co-authored by a travel agency called Intrepid Travel and the Future Labs Institute, posits a future deeply impacted by climate change and restrictions on tourist travel to combat it. So, firstly, how do you know this climate change is going to deeply impact the future? Well, it's models, and what do models do? Well, models are programmed by fallible human people. And because of that, they can be constructed to give a certain narrative or give a certain picture. And in many cases, the models that are relied upon to prove climate change is what they say it is. They don't include the sun. So imagine that fiery hot sphere that passes through the sky on a daily basis and burns your skin and makes things grow, gives life to everything underneath it. That doesn't need to be included in the weather models that we're doing. Just leave that bit out because the temperature cycles, the heating, the cooling, the warming, it's just got nothing to do with that, obviously. So personal carbon allowances. These are going to restrict how often one is permitted to travel, and it's going to become the new normal. Where have we heard that before? Personal carbon allowances could help curb carbon emissions and lower travel's overall footprint. They could, right? It's a possibility, or they might just rinse people of what little money they have left and force it into the pockets of governments and corporations and the people who are, as I said, who are benefiting from rolling out this insane agenda. These allowances will manifest as passports that force people to ration their carbon in line with the global carbon budget, which is 750 billion tons until 2050. So you're being forced right there. It's not to do with your consent. They're not seeking you to voluntarily do this, which would be the ethical and moral way, by being open and upfront. And here's the information. Here's what we know. Check it, analyze it for yourself, stress test it, steel man that information to make sure it is watertight and not being doctored. Be transparent and be open. This is actually happening. And so we would appreciate it if you would voluntarily make some changes because, look, this is what's happening. But the fact that it's not done that way, the fact that they're having to force people and coerce people and bludgeon you over the head with nonsense narratives, bad data, and stupid computer models means that it's a lot of bullshit. And what they're trying to do is coming from a place of control. It's coming from a place of evil intent. And it is immoral and unethical. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to force people to do this, right? To take part in this silly scam. So by 2040, we can expect to see limitations imposed on the amount of travel that is permitted each year. Yeah. So you don't have, according to these people, and these quotes are from, it does say us up here. Yeah, there's a report. Yeah, it's that report. Sustainable future for travel. So they're admitting here that you don't have a natural God-given right to travel. Being a human, living man, a living woman, you actually have the right to go anywhere you want at any time. But they're saying you don't have that. Your ability to travel is a permission, and we decide who has that permission, who is permitted to go when, to go where, and when they're allowed to go, and by what method of transportation. And of course, if you have a lot of access to more money, more funny money, if you have connections, if you have some concocted job title that means you must be flying around the world in a private jet in order to force other people to not have access to planes, then you will get your permission, right? But the rest of us, the average Janes and Joes on the ground who are just being bamboozled, we're going to have to seek and beg and ask for permission to, get in our car and go down the street to buy a loaf of bread. So something to look forward to. So said differently, so this is kind of this is all a quote directly from the report, but then Tyler Durnan's putting it in real speak here for us. Your standard of living is your energy usage. Reducing a society's energy usage is the same as reducing its living standards. Yeah, exactly. So when they're telling you you've got to stop driving and you got to reduce your energy usage, they're telling you that you need to reduce your standard of living. But obviously they're forcing you and coercing you and doing it fraudulently, because they can't do it openly, transparently, with ethics and integrity, because the whole thing is a scam. And then there's a table down here which is about degrowth, which I've talked about in a previous episode. I talked about economic, I think the word was economic degrowth. So the climate alarmists are relying on unfalsifiable premises, and they require some degrowth, and the level it's going to take to follow these arbitrary computer models is an 80 in the UK, in the USA, an 86% reduction, and in the UK an 80%, and Australia and Canada is pretty similar. Now, what I wanted to draw attention to here is like, okay, we've got USA, we've got UK, we've got Australia, we've got Canada, and all your living standards needs to come down by 80%. So that's the plan. If you're wondering why everything's getting more expensive and harder to afford, and why all these videos are coming online of women crying in their cars because they can't afford to pay their bills and their mortgage and their rent and buy food for their children and keep the heating on, and they're starting to have to make these really hard choices between, do we eat or do we stay warm? Do we pay the rent, or do we have a hot bath and shower? These are the kind of questions that people in so-called first world, so-called developed, so-called wealthy nations are now having to face. And it's because the agenda is to reduce your quality and standard of living by 80% effing. I really nearly swore there. I really wanted to. And here is a woman who's just going to tell you outright to your face what this is all about. So let's listen to her. And this is Ireland's Green Party Senator Pauline OReilly. And she says, what does she say?
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good. When you think about it.
So they're restricting your freedom, but don't worry about it. It's for the common good. We need to restrict your freedom for the common good. And who benefits from the common good? Well, just have a look historically at who benefits from the common good. Any agenda, any sort of communist style agenda, because that's what the communists they want to. It's for the greater good. It's for the good of society. It's for the good of the community. What happens to them? Well, they get slaughtered and murdered. They get their quality of life reduced massively. Let's say by 80-85%, and in many cases they get just indiscriminately murdered. Right. So as I've said so many times, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And anytime you see it's for the greater good, the common good, this is to benefit society, then you know that you're being scammed, and you know that they're telling you that they want to kill you, basically. And so we just had a look at this. Let's go back to the articles here. This table. So this is focusing on USA, UK, Australia, and Canada. What about other countries in the world? Well, let's go to the Enad Data, World Energy and Climate Statistics 2023. This is for coal. New increase in coal consumption in China, up 8.8%. But isn't there a climate crisis that we all need to reduce our standard of living in order to prevent from happening? Surely. Wow, isn't that interesting? Look at that. So what you can see here, coal is going pretty strong, isn't it? Everywhere except the countries and the places that I was just telling you about. So we got the North America. We got Canada. United States still going pretty well. Good on them. But look at the amount that China and India are using. Look at that. I mean, that's going to fuel some massive economic development, and it's going to increase the standard of living in these places. Meanwhile, in these places, which we were just talking about, it's down. It's going down, 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 down. These places are not using coal anymore. And, well, I don't know. Maybe you're in some of these places. Have a look. Are things getting better? Is the standard of living going up? Are things getting cheaper? Are people getting healthier? Are they enjoying more leisure time to do the things that they love and spend time with the people that they love? Well, you tell me. I know what my answer is because I know what's going on where I live. But this is just to show you that we're not all in this together as a global society. There's no global effort, international effort to prevent this climate change catastrophe. It's just being pushed very hard in a few places where they're trying to bring the standard of living down by 85%. And they're a bunch of scumbags for doing it because they're brainwashing and manipulating people into accepting a shit life. So, off the back of that cheerful note, this is an article from Off Guardian about how your DNA is being used against you. So this is the CDC's traveler-based genomic surveillance program. And spoiler alert, it's not about health and safety. It's about feeding your DNA to the vast machine. Yes. So this picture is here because the article starts off with a story about a horse that escaped during a flight, and the flight was forced to turn around and go back to the airport. This story made the author, who's the author, Karen Hunt, made me think about what I'm writing today. The governments, corporations, and scientists that invest our money and pay themselves billions of our dollars in the process to research and experiment on our bodies by altering the very language of life, our DNA, are sure they have everything under control, but what makes them think they can control life and mold it to their will when they don't even know how it started or the mystery of that spark? Yeah, exactly. So she's touching on the great inversion that I was thinking about the other day when I was listening to clips of Yuval Noah Harari and Klaus Schwab and these technocrats, and they're sort of talking about, like, we're going to create artificial life, artificial intelligence. We are going to, like, in the past, life was created by accident, random, chaotic chance. Now we are going to use intelligent design to create our artificial life forms and robots and sentient computer programs. And isn't that amazing? And it's actually just a complete inversion, right? Because human beings, we can't even make a fish. We can't make a worm. We can't even make a mushroom. Or a single microorganism is too complex, too incredibly designed and intricately, perfectly designed to do what it does. We can't make anything like that, right? All we can make is a piece of software that simulates talking to another human being via chat message. That's all we can do, right? But the narrative that they're pushing, that she talks about here, is inverted. It's like all human life is just the result of accident. It's an accidental thing, But now we're going to use the intelligent design because we have intelligent design. Well, I'm sorry, but like, how can non-intelligent non-design create intelligent design? That is just illogical and inconsistent and ridiculous to me. Maybe you have an answer. Maybe I'm just being a dummy. But, tornado in a junkyard is not going to assemble a Boeing 747, is it? So it's an inversion. So like so many things of the modern day. But I think Karen Hunt goes to make some really good points in this article. She's talking about how they promise that their experiments are for our own good, to make us safer, healthier, and happier, when their real desire is to extract every bit of information from our DNA in order to create something new and improved and synthetic. Yep, right on the money. She talks a little bit about the digital injection passports, which are obviously going to feed into our carbon passports and be used to limit our ability to travel and move around if we don't do something about it. Mr. Sadakin, that's a good name. Definitely sounds like somebody you want to be listening to. He says, if you have been vaccinated or tested properly, you can move around. You would be permitted to move around. So for the next pandemic, instead of stopping the movement of people 100%, you can still provide or permit some movement of the people. Oh, thank you, Mr. Sadakin. That's very kind of you. What about people who are not comfortable with taking into their body an experimental gene therapy procedure. What about them? Well, you don't get to move around. That's the implication, isn't it? True to the promise, the WHO announced on the launch of a landmark digital health initiative. WHO will take up the EU system of digital COVID-19 certification to establish a global system. Global system, but there's no effort for, globalist, one world government, new world order type thing. No evidence for that. Except the WHO want to set up a global system that will help facilitate global mobility and protect citizens across the world from ongoing and future health threats. Right. So again, it's the opposite. They're trying to lock everyone down and prevent everyone moving around or going anywhere. This is 1984. It's about creating this narrative that the rest of the world is not safe. So you have to sit at home with your telly screens, with your cameras pointing at you at all times, recording everything you say at all times. And if you say the wrong thing, think the wrong thing, or you don't show up to work and sit in front of your camera, then your door gets kicked down and you get, what happens in the end? You get carted off to room 101 where they strap a cage to your face full of rats. Spoiler alert. Sorry about that if you haven't read the book. As early as 1990, the FBI began building its treasure trove of DNA. As early as 1990. Ooh. It has amassed 21.7 million DNA profiles, which interestingly is only equivalent to 7% of the US population. But yeah, the FBI is doing, working hard out there, just collecting DNA information about the American people. I don't know if you live in America, did you consent to that? Were you asked? Was that something that you were like happy to hand over? In April 2023 statement submitted to Congress to explain the FBI's request to nearly double its current $56.7 million budget. So they're already getting $56.7 million. And they want to double it because they need to collect more DNA samples from the population. So just quickly on the topic of budgets, what happens with these kind of organizations is they get a certain amount of money, and then they have to spend all that money and find ways to justify a bigger budget the next time round. So even if they don't spend that money, even if they don't have a legitimate real thing to spend it on, they'll find things to spend it on, because the only way you can get more money the next time round is if you've spent up the last budget. So none of these organizations that get public funding ever say, do you know what? We didn't need 56 points. We did everything we needed to do with only 30 million, so you can reduce the budget this year. And then the government go, oh, cool. In that case, we don't need to collect as many taxes. We'll pass that that saving on to the public. Never ever happens, right? And that's because the system is set up to not serve the people who are paying into it, who are being extorted and being threatened with violence and imprisonment unless they pay into it, right? So this is how you know you're not free, because you can't opt out of it. You can't say, no, that's cool, no thank you, I'll go over here and do my own thing. I'm going to withdraw my participation in this system. You can't do that, so you're not free, all right? And then secondly, the budgets only ever get bigger, and they have to find more and more reasons to justify their existence. And that tends to be, we have people living among us who we need to investigate, and we need to turn all these efforts against. And the threat is from within. And now we need to turn the citizenry against each other. And now we need to divide and say the enemy is among us, and the domestic right-wing terrorists, who are usually just like married people who want to have children and grow a bit of food. we need to turn all our surveillance against them and make sure we head off this domestic threat. And this is just how the cycle is perpetuated and continues until it all comes crashing down and explodes and implodes, because that's what it's designed to do in the long run. But anyway, back to the article. Over the years, scientists have been perfected their methods for collecting DNA, and now they've turned their attention to environmental DNA, or eDNA. What does that mean? Well, it just means that they're collecting everything everywhere. Look, from floating around in air, water, snow, food, your last cup of coffee. The eDNA technology is used in wastewater surveillance systems. So you're going to the toilet and you're flushing away your waste, and the FBI is collecting the DNA from that. Right? It's just hilariously ridiculous. But I don't know. I guess they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel when it's like, oh, we need more money because we need to hire Bob here to go through all the the wastewater and collect the DNA samples from it. But that's about the job that suits the kind of people who work in the FBI, because they're a bunch of scumbags. Order following. I've been watching X-Files recently. So, you know, that kind of that Mulder and Scully, or Skulder and Mully, as we call them, who just basically spend the whole episode just saying each other's names every single time. It's crazy. But yeah, that's not what the FBI are doing. They're not out there catching bad guys and saving you from, I don't know, strange people with intergalactic backgrounds who, you know, it's none of that cool, like, film Hollywood type stuff going on. They're actually just rooting through your waste, trying to gather, build up a DNA profile of you. So why are they doing this? Why are they collecting all this DNA? Well, countries like China already conduct extensive and explicit genetic tracking of minority populations, including Tibetans and Uyghurs. All right. There's a link here if you want to know more about that. If you are incredulous, I would encourage you to check it out. So they can use all this data to track minorities. That sounds like something that a benevolent and loving organization would do, doesn't it? Scientists think they can control nature, but they have no idea the long-term consequences of their actions. As humanity's natural immune system is destroyed by toxic chemicals, drugs, and the very technology that we are promised will save us, experts aren't suggesting we return to natural remedies and a healthier lifestyle. Rather, we must ingest more and more of the synthetic drugs perpetuating our illnesses. Those who get richer and more powerful thanks to the drug and surveillance industries know very well the dangers this course poses for humanity, yet they keep doing it anyway. Of course they do. So, good article here concluding with, this is not in any way just about COVID. COVID was the excuse to set up a system tracking and monitoring ordinary citizens. Yes, that is it. That's what it's all about. It's about tracking, tracing, and databasing every single aspect of you, who you are, what you do, what you think, where you go, and controlling it and taking it away from you in many cases. So an episode about environmentalism would not be complete unless we talked about the recent COP28 United Nations climate change. This is the 28th conference, and they got together in the UAE. Ironic, because they're the biggest exporters of oil. But let's have a look a little bit about that. So this is an article on CapX. Since 2017, attendance has increased for each conference from 16,028 participants to 36,674. So it's on the rise. There's more and more people being invited to this. I didn't get my invitation. Sad, but you know, I don't have a private jet to fly there on to attend. So that's probably why I didn't get invited. So this is about the UK being a world leader on climate change. In addition to 85 billion spent on global quangos such as the UN, a recent injection of 2 billion to the Green Climate Fund is equal to the total contribution of the USA, which has an economy 7 times larger than the UK. The UK is also a strong candidate in terms of emissions, producing less than 1% of the global total. Right now, this is really important and key to remember when they are restricting your 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Wales, when they are hammering people who drive older cars with ULEZ charges for going into and out of London and Bristol and probably soon Manchester. When they are forcing you to choose between, do I eat or do I heat or eat? You got to remember that globally we are a drop in the ocean. We are really contributing F all. And then you look at China. There's nobody going over to China telling them that they got to stop eating and stop driving and stop traveling around. There's nobody going over to India telling them the same thing, is there? Oh no, because we did it, and now they have a right to do it as well. Meanwhile, the global the standard of living in the UK and America and other places is being brought down by 85%. So Sunak is just the latest in a long line of British prime ministers falling over themselves to prove their green credentials. Yes. May introduced the 2050 net zero commitment into law. Johnson was hawkish on these issues. May and Johnson are the last two PMs, or previous PMs, prime ministers, and they published the world's first transport decarbonisation plan in 2021. COP28 looks set to introduce further bizarre zealotry into the climate conversation. And zealotry, that word is key there. It is zealotry. It's a religion. It's hijacked people's innate desire to connect with spiritually with something bigger and beyond and higher than themselves, and I mean high in terms of I don't know, dimensions or vibration or spirituality. There's all sorts of different words, and I'm not so good at explaining it, but there's something at play that is bigger and beyond you and your little life. And you are very, very valuable, and you have there's so much potential that you can do with your life, but you're part of a bigger thing. And there are entities, and there are whatever you want to call them, angels, demons, gods, all these kind of things that exist outside and around and throughout the human perceptive experience. I mean, it's just common sense, and it's logical to admit that that's true. But what's happened in the modern day is all people's efforts and to connect with those that realm has just been sort of eroded and attacked, and religious people have been painted as kind of idiots and superstitious morons who don't really know what's going on, and actually the universe just exploded out of nothing, and then randomly, chaotically, with no purpose, assembled complex life from inorganic compounds that were floating around in space. Yeah, this is what happened. No spirit, no god or gods, no angels or demons. None of that stuff is real. And people intuitively deep down know that stuff is real. And when they've been divorced from any spiritual pursuit or spiritual awareness, they look for something to fill that gap. And whether they look consciously or unconsciously, they'll find something and they'll worship something. So human beings are religious in the sense that they'll have a hierarchy of values, and there'll be something at that top. And what's happening with this movement is that the earth itself is being put at the top, and they're saying we have to protect the planet, and we have to worship and love the planet, and the way to do that is to stop driving, stop having children, stop being warm in the winter, stop using plastic, which I actually agree would be a good thing. We should get rid of plastic, but there's been plastic alternatives around for a long time. They're just squashed out of existence by the monopoly, the plastic monopoly. And so people's sort of inclination to find spiritual meaning in life has been driven towards climate zealotry. And this is why people get so angry and passionate about it, and they scream at you, and they feel that it is because they have a religious belief and conviction in this movement. It is the right, morally correct thing that we have to do, and everyone needs to be involved. And I'm a good person for being involved. Just like, people in the past were like, I'm a good person because I'm a Catholic and I go to church on Sundays. Nothing to do with my actual actions and interactions with other human beings and what I bring to the world and what I manifest in the world. Just the very act of walking to church and standing there in my fancy clothes and nodding somberly and standing up and sitting down when I'm told to, that is enough. And I'm a good person for doing that. So, it's all performative in a lot of ways. And that's what's happened. And so I think that's why zealotry is a really good word choice in this example. Reports suggest that nations which overconsume meat, they're coming after the meat again, will be asked to reduce their reliance on these products. Yeah, you're not going to be asked to reduce. Suddenly they're going to be, they're already expensive. Meat products, animal products are already expensive. You pay an absolutely massive premium to get meat that hasn't been interfered with. Right? If you just want the meat that is grown naturally, regeneratively, and it's clean and free from chemicals and antibiotics and now mRNA injections, you have to pay a massive premium for this stuff, even though it's easier and less effort, less harmful in fact, improves the environment to farm in this way. That's expensive. But if you want some factory farmed meat from tortured animals that are terrorized, that are injected full of crazy chemicals and hormones and all sorts of shit, if you want that stuff, it's cheap and it's affordable. It's upside down, backwards, up to inside out world, and it's frustrating. Yeah, but they're gonna come after meat again, as well as your cars and your planes. And so long as a vacuous discussion about the UK is regarded abroad dominates net zero policy, it will be difficult to make wise choices for the future. The hysterical rhetoric of UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres and alarming reports about demands for less meat eating show that COP28 is unlikely to offer real solutions. There may be huge environmental gains to be made by supply-side reforms at home which facilitate research into renewable energy, but we are saddled with a political class that is more concerned with punishing taxpayers in service of an imaginary international reputation. Exactly. Imaginary international reputation. You know, I've lived abroad, I've lived in other countries, and I tell people, oh, I'm from England, and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, Notting Hill. And they, you know, a lot of people abroad, they might think that people in England all live like Notting Hill or Love Actually, you know, nice big houses, and that's just not the reality at all. But there is this international reputation, and it is imaginary, and they're trying to uphold it. Now it's closely tied to ruining our lives and our standard of living in the name of green zealotry. Excuse me, I got a cough. All right, this is True North. Hadn't heard of this before last week's show. Now I'm back on True North, and yeah, it is a good website. And they've got this article here, which is about climate genocide and white supremacy dominates the COP28 discussion. So the last article wasn't enough, kind of blowing up what a farce this whole thing is. This article will definitely put the final nail in the coffin there, which is telling us the world can't tackle climate change unless it first deals with the prevailing problems of white supremacy and colonialism, according to a COP28 panel of climate activists from Canada and abroad in Dubai. We cannot continue this extractive economy. Our call to action for gender justice, racial justice, upholding indigenous rights and the rights of nature, calling for a just transition, and immediately phasing out fossil fuels is an ongoing agenda for people on the planet. Just transition. We're going to come back to that phrase in an article in a moment. But I just had to highlight this person's name, which is Deranger. But derange is the thing that's made it stand out to me. Like, I feel deranged reading all this absolute nonsense, and I feel like that name is no accident. They're actually deranging people, and they're undercutting their ability to think clearly, think logically, and to organize and coordinate together to build communities that are resilient, that look after our environment and make it a safe, happy, lovely place to live. They are deranging it. And so I just thought that was a name worth highlighting. Because all these solutions are false solutions, and actually white supremacy, colonization, and patriarchy have no place in the climate action plan. Deranger's comments continued in the broader context of intersectionality, which is a concept originating in the academic context of critical race studies, which I've covered before, critical race theory and critical race studies. Colonization has brought with this the imposition of patriarchy, which has turned and twisted and perverted our culture into a colonial structure where we are told we need to adopt these systems, and we have been forced into these patriarchal systems. That is just one of the most deranged sentences I've ever heard. Deranger, I think your name is absolutely on point. So the solution to this is inevitably going to be, we need to force more people to adopt systems based on climate, based on carbon allowance, and no eating meat and no traveling and going on holiday and driving a car around, right? The murder of the four legs, the wings, and the murder of those that fins guide. The murder of water herself. Oh no. We're murdering water, people. We need to think about what we're doing. And the murder of the sacred air. And the murder of the ways of the natural worlds. They have to carry that burden. What do we get to do? We get to be sheroes and heroes. I thought that was pretty good, actually. Sheroes and heroes. But this is this is the religious side of things, right? This is all living beings are precious and have a right to exist, which I agree with, except for the white patriarchy, the members of the white male patriarchy that are murdering the water herself and murdering the sacred air. So it's becoming an inversion. So instead of humans being the custodians of the natural world and the animals within, and the caretakers, of nature herself, it's being inverted. So that actually we're a virus on the planet, and you know what you do with viruses. You want to get rid of them by eliminating them with some sort of medical or pharmaceutical intervention, right? So this is the Daily Skeptic, the black lie at the heart of net energy fantasies. I'm going to have to pick up the pace a bit. Still got quite a bit to get to, but the black lie at the heart of net zero energy fantasies is that there are workable backups for intermittent and wind and solar. Apart from oil and gas, there are none. Right, so in England, we don't have much sun and we don't actually get that much wind, right? So shifting all our energy use and requirements to be provided by these two modalities is a lie. It's never going to work. It's going to lead to that 85% drop in living standards that we covered earlier on. So that's the gist of that article. Oh yeah, but they do mention somewhere down here the Royal Society. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Just do a quick Control F and spell Royal correctly. There we go. So earlier this year, the UK Royal Society published a wide-ranging storage paper pointing out that current batteries cannot possibly store more than a fraction of energy needed to support the grid when wind fails. And fail it does, not just during spells of extremely cold weather, but as the Royal Society pointed out, during past annual low wind speed periods. Desperate to keep the net zero fiction alive, the Royal Society promoted hydrogen as a backup. An idea only slightly less dumb than digging up the planet to produce vast quantities of limited life batteries. Yeah, so they mentioned the Royal Society, so I thought I would draw that to your attention. What is the Royal Society? So Wikipedia is telling us this society fulfills a number of roles: promoting science and its benefits, recognizing excellence in science, supporting outstanding science, providing scientific advice for policy, education, and public engagement, and fostering international and global cooperation. So in other words, and as I mentioned in the previous article, when people have been stripped of their spiritual practice and their connection with the spiritual realm, something else has to replace it. And so you've got either the eco zealotry of Gaia worship, or you've got scientism. And I've talked about this in my episode, Follow the White Lab Coats. Scientism, where the priestly class of men in white lab coats roll out a graph or a computer model or some data, and they say, the science which we must follow and we must believe in tells us that we have to force you to eat bugs, stop driving, stop going on holiday, and accept 85% reduction in living quality and standards. And the Royal Society is at the forefront of pushing scientism and fostering international and global cooperation. So scientism is going to be the global religion, the religion that kind of stands atop this one world control system, which is enabled through the internet and will gather all the data on everybody, with the FBI going through your poo to get the DNA stuff, to the NSA, which I talked about in my last episode, collecting every electronic transmission that takes place on the internet. All that is going to be collected and gathered in the name of science so that we can be ruled over by a technocratic, scientific priest class. And most people will go along with it because they have been trained and conditioned to believe in the science, to trust in the science, because science is God, and they are now indoctrinated and members of the scientism religion. So you can, you can put Scientology to one side, Buddhism gone, Islam gone, Christianity gone. The new one is scientism, and that is what the Royal Society is working very hard. Since 1660, in fact, 363 years ago, they have been working hard to bring this about. So let's scroll down a little bit. There's a quote down here I highlighted. So in the 21st century, what have they been up to? To show support for vaccines against COVID-19, the Royal Society, under the guidance of both Nobel Prize-winning Venki Ramakrishnan and Sir Adrian Frederick Melhuish Smith, added its power to shape public discourse. Right, so they're shaping. What does that mean? So what? Like, they're shaping it, they're controlling it, they're molding it. They're using propaganda techniques to control and guide the way people speak publicly about these things. They're shaping it. That's the unseen hidden hand that is controlling how you speak and think about things. And they also proposed legislation and punishment of those who produced and disseminated false information about the experimental medical interventions. I was actually surprised that Wikipedia had this down as experimental medical intervention, because Most of the time, these mainstream type of places just call it a vaccine, which is not what it is. It's not a vaccine by any historically established sense of what that word refers to. They deliberately convoluted it. These injections contain a completely different type of novel technology that had never ever been approved as safe or successfully tested or rolled out on any meaningful scale, and they used the emergency to roll this out and test it on everybody. And so I thought that was either a sneaky little edit that has managed to bypass the censor, or they're just kind of getting more comfortable with just saying it out loud. But, 3 years ago, if you were saying, look, these are experimental medical interventions, you would get deplatformed, defunded, demonetized, and you would get your maybe YouTube channel, Facebook groups closed down. That was the wrong thing. You couldn't say it. But good to know the Royal Society's out there proposing to punish people who ask questions, and they say it's about false information, but is it really? Well, if you've been paying any kind of attention, you know that no, it is not. Royal Society, that is who they are, bunch of scumbags. And from the Royal Society to the King. He's delivered, he was over at COP28 delivering a highly politicized speech to support collectivist net zero project. So collectivism, as I've already mentioned in this episode, that's to do with doing things for the greater good, doing things for the community, and doing things for society. That is collectivism. The individual is an ant in an ant colony, and the queen is the most important ant, and all the other ants are disposable. They can be sent off to die and just work till they die, and they must be controlled like a hive mind. And that is kind of like where the scientism and the technocracy is wanting to take us, with things like wearable tech, which are on the body right now, but within they're already trialing and rolling out things that are in the body, and that's going to be coming pretty soon. But yeah, the King, who is said he's not going to be political, is giving a speech trying to push the narrative of scientism and eco worship, zealotry, and so he's been flying around the world and telling people. So speaking at COP28, he said, "The Earth does not belong to us. We belong to the Earth." So again, an inversion, but that specifically is a biblical inversion. He exhibits, sadly on a world stage, a snobbish disdain for capitalism, right? So he wants to get rid of capitalism. This capitalist trend over the last 200 years has harnessed the power of natural hydrocarbons to raise billions to a standard of living and health unimaginable in previous generations. All that is over. That's got to go. We need to bring that back down, so that Charles can keep living his life of luxury while we're all scrabbling around in the dirt trying to fighting over potatoes, probably, if we're allowed to have them. In 2009, Charles said we can no longer afford consumerism and the age of convenience was over. Well, he himself lives a life of pampered indulgence. Of course he does. The restoration of nature and sustainable agriculture is shorthand for largely meat-free diets and massive reductions in nitrogen, fertilizer. The latter in particular will lead to worldwide famine. COP28 seems set to announce new food and agricultural restrictions using the tactic of demonizing methane, a gas emitted by animals and humans that is barely measurable in the atmosphere due to a very short life cycle. Whenever the subject of cooperation between public and private sectors is raised, there's an immediate dash to count the spoons, since it can only signal a large transfer of cash from productive industries to unproductive and inferior green operations. Yeah, that is right on the money, and we're going to learn a little bit more about unproductive and inferior green operations later in this episode, as well as methane. That's going to come back as well in future articles. So moving on. Too green to fail. So this is about Lloyds Bank. If you remember back in the financial crash of 2008, a bunch of bankers who messed up and did shady, dodgy business practices and brought ruin upon themselves were deemed too big to fail. And so they were bailed out by you and I, the taxpayer, and they were allowed to continue. And so, if you are protected from the consequences of your actions, you're going to keep fucking up, aren't you? Because you have to suffer the consequences in order to learn to not to do the thing. But Lloyds Bank, they're pushing this initiative called the Just Transition, which I did mention earlier in a previous article. So you can see the language is being seeded. Just transition. It's about justice, right? You giving up your standard of life, your meat, your car, your ability to go on holiday, and reducing that by 80%, that is justice. That is a just transition. And so Lloyd's is setting themselves up to be, rather than too big to fail, too green to fail. So this is like the pandering of corporations now to the net zero zealotry, to show that they're on board with this religion in order to hopefully protect themselves and be viable into the future when all this gets locked into place and everyone is being punished for not being for not worshipping the world hard enough. They know that's coming, so they're positioning themselves ahead of time. So what are they doing? Well, you can find a word salad of statements like this: broad range of stakeholders, timely, respectful, and active dialogue, informed participatory engagement that doesn't slow the process down but builds buy-in. Yeah, that's absolutely typical of the corporate world. None of it means anything, but it, to people who don't read and don't take care to understand the etymology of words and how there is a history to words and the meaning of words, and don't take part in that dialogue by reading widely and voraciously, they get pulled in and fooled by this kind of nonsense, corporate, meaningless, gibberish garbage. So Lloyd's is setting up a just transition hub, and we have to ensure the next transition is just, so that all is just, and that's capital J. So it's not even justice lowercase j, it's uppercase J, justice. So they're getting serious. So that all communities and stakeholders not only survive but also thrive. Well, again, it's the opposite of that. They're actually trying to make sure communities are fighting each other and arguing with each other and scrapping with each other, so that nobody can coordinate a community that can resist and take aim at the corporate assholes that are doing all this stuff. Does it not strike you as odd to hear a director of a large bank talking in this way as though she is a politician? Great question. This is speaking to the fact that all these things have been politicized now, and there is no free sort of market anymore, because it all has to be pulled in line to this environmental, social governance agenda, which is political in nature and which is basically communism. It's all about what the communitarianism. It's about subjugating your individual aspirations, dreams, and life to the needs of the collective. That is what this is all about. And as I said, look into the history of collectivism. Check it out. You will be shocked and amazed that people still walk around with like the communist, hammer and sickle openly on their whatever bags, t-shirts, and clothing. I mean, the amount of people who died, right? Think about the outrage that's caused when somebody wears a swastika, but no outrage is caused when somebody walks around with the hammer and sickle. And you just compare like the death toll of those two movements. It's staggering. Although, the swastika is actually a really ancient symbol that goes back even further and has far more deeper, powerful meanings than what it is now associated with in the minds of most people, which tells you that most people have been kind of mind controlled to make that association through propaganda. So this next article is the MIT Technology Review. And so how are these proposed solutions, how are they going? Well, the University of California has dropped their carbon offsets. Why? Because the researchers were identifying tree planting or similar projects from which it could confidently purchase carbon offsets that would reliably cancel out greenhouse gas emissions across its campuses, and it couldn't find any. There are none, right? So it's a whole scam. It's a scam like so many other things. Like, if you just pay us more money, then you can carry on doing the thing. And that's what it's all about. It's about controlling and limiting behavior by forcing you to pay for things until you cannot pay for them, and then it's like, well, you can't do it then. If you can't pay for it, you can't do it. And this is just like why we're taxed to ridiculous levels, why all of these money grabs just keep going up and up and up and up and up. And it's just interesting to see that a mainstream university is kind of like, this thing doesn't work. So what are they going to do about that? Well, they are going to focus on directly cutting emissions across its campuses. What does that mean? It means less meat, less cars, less travel, more remote learning, and ultimately fewer humans. That's what all this actually. That spoiler alert. The end game of all of this is fewer humans. Spectator is reporting that the market is rejecting electric cars. Now that some of the subsidies and mandates are being removed, sales of electric cars are collapsing. It turns out that most drivers don't want them. Who could have seen this coming? The Office for Budgetary Responsibility had forecast that EVs would account for 67% of the market by 2027, but it has halved that, predicting just 38% by the year. Yeah, so without them being pushed and financed and funded artificially by taxpayer money, subsidies and grants, these kind of things, nobody wants them because they're shit. They're dangerous. The batteries in the bottom, when they go off, they're almost impossible to put out. You need to use an insane amount of water. You can dunk, if an electric car's gone up in flames, you can chuck it in a lake and it'll carry on burning for days, even in a lake. It's just staggeringly unsafe. Not to mention, you can't charge them. It takes ages to charge them, and a fully charged one doesn't go that far. So you need to plan your whole journeys and routes around where you can charge. The electricity that is needed to charge them comes from, that still has to be generated. In a lot of cases, it comes from coal and natural gas. They're just they're rubbish. They look horrible. They're more dangerous because they're quiet and people can't hear them coming. So it's a niche product that needs to go away. The market has decided that EV is not the answer. It's just a question of when the political class will catch up with that reality. Well, they're not going to, because they're not interested in reality. They're interested in self-serving fake versions and narratives of reality. Okay, the Telegraph is saying crazy environmental standards risk turning Britain into a nation of green ghost towns. So this is to do with there's a push to make all commercial property aligned with net zero and environmental new regs, and this is just pushing them into disrepair and disuse. So new laws came into force on April the 1st, which ban landlords from renting offices with an energy efficiency rating of E or below. So number of non-domestic energy performance certificates B or better issued per quarter. As with things all net zero, the regulations are disproportionate and fail to take into account the practicalities of attempting to implement them. So companies that are attempting to implement these changes are going bankrupt. They can't afford to do it. Experts say upgrading a property to an energy efficient rating of E is relatively simple, but getting to a B is different undertaking altogether. Many buildings will require huge improvements ranging from rooftop solar panels on roofs, more windows, better ventilation, more insulation, and they're being urged to replace gas central heating systems with expensive noisy heat pumps. This leaves landlords with a choice: carry out expensive renovation work to build buildings up to standard, or cut your losses and try and sell the properties. So actually, I've been looking at the property market recently and learning a bit about it. There's loads of commercial stuff coming up, and it's dirt cheap, but this is because pretty soon people are going to be forced, coerced, bullied out of using property and inhabiting property and renting property that doesn't meet these arbitrary environmental standards. Remember, again, this is all being done to a country whose population is responsible for less than 1% of whatever it is that they're measuring to justify all this nonsense. Estate agents estimating that it will cost between £250 and £300 per square foot to lift a building's rating from C to A. So even small and medium businesses are under attack, because it's only small and medium businesses that are going to suffer this. The big conglomerates, the massive outfits out there are going to be able to handle this, right? Because they have way more resources, they have way more market share, and so again, it is an attack on small and medium businesses, which is an attack on the average person's ability to be independent, financially independent, to start a business, to do something meaningful in the world. It's a centralization of power. It's a break for the big monopolies in all areas of business. It's serving them. It's going to allow banks to buy up property on the cheap, because all these people are going to be desperate to sell, and they'll eventually sell at whatever price they can get. So you can see how this environmentalism, what it's being used to do and what's being done in the name of it. It's because they love you and they care about you and they want you to be healthy and have a good life. New York Post, scientist admits the overwhelming consensus on the climate change crisis is manufactured. What? A manufactured consensus? No way. So we are told climate change is a crisis and that there is an overwhelming scientific consensus. Well, climate scientist Judith Curry says it's a manufactured consensus. She says scientists have an incentive to exaggerate risk to pursue fame and fortune. The media loved her when she published a study that seemed to show a dramatic increase in hurricane intensity. This was picked up by the media, and then climate alarmists realized, oh, here is a way to do it. Tie extreme weather events to global warming. Boom. There it is. So this consensus is not a consensus because the scientists have followed the scientific method to prove it. It's a consensus because this is where the funding is, right? If you come up with some effort that you say is going to reduce climate change and it's going to help us get to net zero, then you are going to be funded. Your research is going to be funded. You are going to get checks written to you because that is the prevailing orthodoxy and that is the prevailing religion, scientism, Gaia worship, zealotry that all these corporations and politicians are being and media outlets are leading the masses of people to worship and to follow, right? So she is, this is Curry, she's saying, more intense hurricanes give them fuel. I was adopted by the environmental advocacy groups and the alarmists, and I was treated like a rock star. I was flown all over the place to meet with politicians. But then some researchers pointed out gaps in her research. And like a good scientist, I investigated, she says. She realized the critics of her research were correct. Part of it was bad data. Part of it was natural climate variability. Again, another thing that gets completely left out of the climate modeling. Curry was the unusual researcher who looked at criticism of her work and actually concluded they have a point. So she is actually doing science. She's not believing science. She's not trusting the science. She's not worshipping or following the science. She is doing science. This is the scientific method. Come up with a hypothesis, test it, falsify it, get other people to look at it, test it, make it strong, ask questions, find holes, and go where the truth leads you, not where the money leads you. And the money at the minute is leading people to believe in this stupid nonsense narrative of climate change, which requires sacrifice of, not everybody on the planet, just some people, just a specific group of people. And that's how manufactured consensus happens. Thank you very much, Judith Curry, for doing the right thing. You are a hero. You're a shiro. All right, Spectator, the problem with climate protesting clergy. So here's a picture from a church. I think it was an Anglican church. And they got, Chichester Diocese funds climate chaos. And this is Christian climate action. So I said it was a religious thing. And it's tied into people's innate sense of wanting to have a connection with the divine or the higher spiritual realms or dimensions. Here it is on the nose. In this one picture is showing you how that innate sense is being hijacked, and that innate desire is being hijacked and turned towards the climate scam. Just that one picture. I don't even need to read the article. I just let you dwell on that picture for a second. They're down on one knee, holding up the signs. They don't look very happy about it. They look like they've been forced to do it. They know deep down that it's a stupid thing to be doing. So there was shock in news outlets and on social media this week when a gaggle of Christians, a gaggle. I didn't know that was the collective noun for Christians. A gaggle. It was, isn't it geese? Isn't it a gaggle of geese? A gaggle of Christians, including clerics, disrupted Evensong at Chichester in the name of climate action. So they're disrupting, an established religious practice, which has its whole form and function, and whether or not you are into Christianity, beside the point. But an established old tradition, they're interrupting that in the name of climate action, because climate action is more important. Because it's the new religion. There should be absolutely no surprise at all that clergy were involved in this particular protest. Clerics are predominantly older and predominantly middle class. Their average age, their average level of education, their voting patterns, and their general outlook on life puts them square in the catch zone for climate radicalism. Yep, I was trying to say this earlier, but I think I fumbled it a little bit. But there is a very definite type of person who gets targeted for this stuff and drawn into it. just as with anything, we are all targeted, and the things we're into, we're all in danger of falling into an echo chamber and not being able to see the bigger picture because we just get fed by the algorithms, the stuff that we already agree with or that reinforces the things we already believe. So you got to be deliberately stepping out of what you're used to listening to and looking at and checking out other sources, what else is being said, because now more than ever, that's really important. But there is a certain kind of demographic who are more likely to fall into this climate radicalism. And that this article tells you a little bit about it there. And what makes this differently and more annoying is the implied religious superiority of the protesters, the implicit suggestion of, look, we're like Jesus in the temple, sucking it to the man. That was pretty good writing. Except they're not, are they? They're doing the safest sort of protest in the safest sort of place in order to affirm the safest and most widely held beyond pensant sort of opinion. I've never heard that phrase before. That opinion that the Earth is, in climate terms, buggered, may yet be proved to be right. No, it's not. There's nothing wrong with the Earth. The Earth will carry on. I mean, the arrogance and the hubris of thinking that we need to save the Earth. It's the upside down thing, like I mentioned earlier. And a new phrase for me to look up. That's nice. If you know what that means, I don't know. Send me a message. I would appreciate that. So this isn't just an internal church point. My generation is the one that will have to deal with the horrors of climate change. The horrors of climate. Yeah. So it's still a bit hand wringing and alarmism even in this article. Thanks, Spectator. But they are super mainstream, Spectator, aren't they? New York Times. Bill Gates is talking about how he invests his money in a warming world. And this is a contrast really with the stuff that comes up after this. So Bill Gates has done this guest essay in the New York Times, which is another completely controlled and mainstream outlet. But he's telling you that we need rich individuals, companies, and countries to step up to ensure green technologies are affordable for everyone everywhere. Well, it's the super rich friends, if you know that clip, that we need rich people to do. They're the only ones who can save us, the rich people. We need to ensure that non-rich people get even poorer, 85% reduction in their quality of living, and then whoever survives that shock tactic, the shock doctrine, whoever survives that and with some kind of wealth intact on the other side, they need to invest massively in green technologies that are developing transformative green solutions. Well, how are investments in green technologies going? Shit is the answer, according to the Wall Street Journal, which says green investors were crushed. Now it's time to make money. The lessons have been hard, but should remind investors in the sector of some basic facts of investing. Yeah, so green investments are not going well, regardless and despite what old Billy Gates of hell is trying to tell us. So this year has been almost universally bad for clean investments. Why is that? Because all this green technology, green technology obviously exists. There's obviously technology which is cleaner and would run better and would benefit us all. Who knows? Maybe there's even some sort of free energy stuff out there, right? Or there's all sorts of stuff that's not being used. Magnets, electromagnetism. There's all sorts of things not being used, not being made widely available, that is being suppressed and hidden from us. And the options that are available, they're just money laundering operations, basically. They're just scams. They're just ways to transfer and move wealth around into the hands of the few, right? And the market is speaking and telling us this. This year, there's been almost universally bad for clean investments. Electric cars have disappointed, hitting startups and suppliers and pushing the price of lithium ores used to produce the battery metal. And in many cases, that lithium ore is the result of child slave labor who have to go down there and mine it out. This provides the first lesson. Debt. The clean energy sector is dependent on vast amounts of borrowing, so high interest rates really hurt. Roman Boner, another funny name that I had to highlight, who runs a clean energy fund at Dutch fund manager Robeco, points out that major projects are typically financed with 80% of debt. So rises in financial costs have a big impact on competitiveness. Yeah. So this is how it all works. It's all about, you got to borrow some money and then, we can just change the interest rate whenever we feel like it and crush and strangle anybody who's in debt, whether that's mortgage repayments, we can repossess your home because we just cranked up the interest rate and now you can't afford to pay it to service that debt, or whether it's businesses, right? It's all kind of a Ponzi scheme scam that is controlled from the top down. Ronald Reagan overstated it when he said, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Well, I don't think it was an overstatement. I think that was a massive understatement. Absolutely massive, critically, understatement of the century, perhaps even. So yeah, thanks Bill Gates for your shitty investment advice. Do the opposite of whatever he's telling you to do is the lesson. Daily Skeptic again. With climate change, as with COVID, the cure is worse than the disease. Yep. So this is an article by Guy de la Bedoyere. Bedoyere. Not sure about his name. But it's a much cooler and better name than Roman Boner. Much cooler and better name. Peter Lilly, former Trade and Industry Secretary, wrote a piece for The Telegraph the other day about the impact of net zero policies. I asked ministers if they know any peer-reviewed study accepted by the IPCC, which is the UN body established to assess the science of global warming, that forecast the extinction of humanity if the world takes no action to phase out fossil fuels. The answer was clear. There are none. So it's because it's not about fossil fuels, which shouldn't even be called fossil fuels, but that's another topic. It's about controlling and manipulating who gets to have a decent quality of life and who gets access to the freedoms that the overlords of this realm, who think that they can control everybody and everything, they get to dictate. And they've dictated and decided that certain countries in the world still get to have the benefit of burning these, of raising their living standards for their population by burning these substances and utilizing these substances, and others don't. And that's basically the message that we've kind of been looking at and tracking throughout this episode. The central conclusion of Lord Stern's official review of the economics of climate change was that if the world does nothing, it would be equivalent to making us all 5% poorer than we would otherwise be now forever. Oh, so 5% poorer if we do nothing versus 85% reduction, 85% poorer if we keep following these net zero scams and cons and worship at the altar of eco-zealotry. So, what do you think would be the best out of these two? During COVID, we saw the belief that one threat to us, regardless of individual perceptions of how significant that threat was or the variability of its impact, was so all-encompassing that the potential consequences of measures to control it were widely ignored by governments and certain epidemiologists. 100% correct. There's a thing going around. The average age of people dying from it is higher than the life expectancy of the country, so somewhere in the mid-80s. It has a 0.0014 or something fatality rate. And so because of that, we need to lock people at home, constantly bombard them with fear. We need to make them worried. We need to stop them from working, stop them from seeing their loved ones, stop them from having face-to-face interaction, hugging, singing. We're not allowed to sing. We're not allowed to go to pubs, bars, gyms, churches. All that stuff is closed. Small businesses closed. Only place you can go is your local supermarket. Huge supermarket will funnel everybody into one place because we've closed all the other places, right? None of it made any sense. The cure was worse than the disease, and the same thing is true for the climate change con. So we're on to the section of the episode where I'm going to give you some resources before I wrap things up. So good YouTube channel here, Weather War 101. This is it hasn't put anything new on for quite a while. Unfortunately, because some of these videos are really, really good. But there's a website that goes along with this. But Weather War 101 is worth looking into to give you a new insight into what might actually be causing all these weather events. Is it just all man-made? Is it all man-made? Is it because you're eating meat and driving your car around? Is that what's causing the weather events? No. Spoiler alert, the answer is no. So loads of videos and interesting things to check out here. And what he's, I say he, I think it's a he, I'm not sure, might be a she. But what this person who runs this channel is suggesting is that there are massive machines which boil water rapidly and shoot out into the sky clouds And they do this in strategic places around the world, and those clouds go up, and what goes up must come down. So these machines generate clouds, and then those clouds go up into the atmosphere and feed into the different cycles and patterns of weather and the different jet streams, and they manifest eventually as hurricanes. Yes, that's what they do. And they're like, what are you talking about? There's a machine that generates clouds. Yes, there is. Yes, there are. Don't believe me? Well, check out this climate change conspiracy theorist, Jeremy Clarkson. So a little video here. We'll make sure we're on we're on 1.5.
This is the shuttle's fuel tank. It may only be 130 miles to space, but to cover that distance, the engines will use 500,000 gallons of fuel, and that works out at 2 feet to the gallon. Despite the cost, however, NASA does need to test these engines once in a while. So they built this place in the wetlands of Mississippi. The first thing they installed was a huge loudspeaker, through which they played white noise to simulate the sound of a rocket. They then sent a number of trucks in different directions out into the wilderness, and the drivers were ordered to stop when the noise levels became acceptable. This gave them an imaginary boundary line, and anyone living on the inside of it was offered a simple choice. Stay, and you'll never hear another television program as long as you live. Or take the NASA shilling and get out. No one stayed, and NASA ended up with exactly what it wanted. 125,000 acres of nothing. They even had to move 5 cemeteries, because the noise they were planning on making would wake the dead. Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And, as it turns out, the cleanest. Now, the most amazing thing is that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you, it's raining. That's unbelievable.
There you go. Jeremy Clarkson. NASA is creating clouds and making rain. So they are the rainmakers. Pretty incredible, I think. And so this ties into the weather war stuff, which these videos show us satellite footage of where these machines may be placed and how these clouds just kind of spontaneously appear, or they look to spontaneously appear in a coordinated place, in a coordinated pattern, which looks to be deliberate, right? And then you can watch and trace how these things then go over time and grow to become hurricanes. So Weather War 101, cloud seeding machines. So this video on its own proves to you that there is money and effort and energy going into the manipulation and the creation of weather. This is NASA, right? NASA bought, 125,000 acres, kicked everybody out, threatened them, and is now running these experiments. And, whatever they say it's for is not going to be what it's actually for. But if you don't think that there is there is research, that there is funding going into the control and manipulation of weather, this video disproves it. And it's a BBC video, and it's Jeremy Clarkson. And that is never talked about or discussed at these climate change conferences, at the climate change net zero discussions in your business or your corporation that you might work for, in school. These things are never discussed. So this is the neglected aspect of the whole conversation. There's effort and energy and attention and resources and time being put into the control and manipulation of weather, but that's never discussed and never part of the conversation. Instead, the conversation is, you need to stop eating meat, you need to stop driving your car, you need to stop going on a holiday, and you also need to stop breathing. And I'm not even joking about that last bit, as I'm going to show you in a moment. So Weather War 101 is a website.com. You actually have to go to the Wayback Machine or the archive place to get this, because it's no longer alive. It's no longer a live website, but you can go here and you can click through, check out some of the effective cooling towers, water vapor generation, the real causes of droughts. CIA asks about climate control, HARP, reality versus misdirection. So pretty solid website. Lots of information and lots of further avenues for exploration and learning. He, the person who runs that also has a Weather 101 course that you can buy for $60. And this is, so it is he. I was right to say he, Stephen. Your instructor. The very strange and clearly unnatural events that meteorologists were showing on a daily basis didn't make any sense at all. I needed to understand exactly what I was looking at. Thus began my 2-decade odyssey into understanding severe weather, climate change, and global warming. I spent most of my adult life in the corporate network engineering. I've had a mind for engineering and understanding how things work since childhood. What I discovered after 2 decades of research and daily observation of radar and satellite data changed my understanding of weather and climate exponentially. My perception went from bewilderment over daily events to being able to understand and predict them as easily as predicting sunrise. There is no mystery left in these severe weather events for me, and now I'm sharing that knowledge with you. So there you go. There's a course if you want to learn more, invest a little bit in your education and your learning. I'm not an affiliate and I haven't been through the course, so you'd have to invest in that and take it at your own expense, but I would love to hear what you learn and how it goes if you do. Topics: water in the air, how clouds and rain happen, brief history of industrialization, effects of pollution on cloud formation, cloud condensation nuclei, man-made water vapor generation, effects of radar frequency on artificial CCN, conclusion and reference. So sounds like very interesting stuff. Okay, so on the topic, so now that we've kind of touched upon the possibility that weather events are man-made, or at the very least, there's massive amounts of funding and effort going into figuring out how to make man-made weather events. I wanted to drop a link and a spotlight on the Hurricane Otis Recovery Fund. So Hurricane Otis descended upon Acapulco in Mexico, where I have a number of friends who live there, and so I heard about this. And this, as it tells you here, this hurricane came out of nowhere. Usually, hurricanes can be seen on the satellite radar data and maps building up as they gain momentum and as they suck up more water from the sea. They build up over time, and you usually have a few days to prepare or to batten down the hatches or to get out, whatever. You can usually see them coming. This one came out of nowhere, right? It was, I believe, people started watching it at 9 p.m. at night, and then by 1 a.m. it had gone from nothing into a Category 5. So it says here, Acapulco was hit by a massive hurricane that erupted into a Category 5 from a tropical storm in a matter of hours. And it hit Acapulco, where 1 million people live, in the middle of the night with no warning from the media. So incredibly fishy and very strange. These things usually ramp up slowly over a few days, and you get plenty of warning, and there's people watching the development of these things 24 hours a day. In this case, it came out of nowhere and it descended on a town which is known for and associated with freedom and anarchism. This is the home of a yearly event called Anarchapulco, where people get together to discuss better ways of doing things and real solutions to the actual problems we face, not the fake solutions pushed on us by politicians who just want to win points with the eco zealotry crowd. Actual solutions to actual problems, and people who I've spoken to who live there say it's a wonderful place. People are very friendly and it's a good atmosphere, it's a good energy and a good vibe. I would love to visit there one day. And this place was wiped out. They didn't have electricity for weeks, no internet for weeks. Thankfully, it doesn't look like there were too many casualties, although the infrastructure, buildings, windows, all that has been torn up, ripped up, and just devastated. So this is a fundraiser run by the Dollar Vigilante and his friends and his community. So you can have a look down here and consider whether you can send some money their way. They're already doing pretty well, getting plenty. You can do crypto. There's multiple options, and the best thing about this is they publish all of their receipts. So it's not like most charities where you give your money and then some CEO of the charity gets a bonus and an extra yacht. Here, all the money you donate will be accounted for, and if you want to check, you can go through the receipts and you can see what is being bought and what is being spent on. Just a really wonderful, transparent, powerful way of helping people. These are the kind of people and kind of movements that we need to support, because the fake ones that are given to us by our mainstream establishment figures and our politicians and through our schooling, all that stuff is bogus, bollocks, bullshit. It's not Build Back Better, it's bogus, bollocks, bullshit. So have a look at that. Hurricane Otis Recovery Fund. All right, few final resources for you, and then I'm going to wrap this up and get out of here. This is the Corbett Report, and this is an article. So, if just in case you're new to the suggestion that there's efforts underway to control and manipulate the weather, just in case that's a new thing to you, and you might be kind of like, no way, and you're incredulous. Corbett Report's been talking about this since 2015. Right, so you're late to the party. That's because you haven't been made aware of this kind of thing, so that's what I'm hoping to do here. Corbett Report in this episode of New World Next Week covers CIA geoengineering. So spy agencies fund climate research in hunt for weather weapon, right? So CIA is pouring money into this. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can click on this video here. It's 20 minutes, and Corbett Report and James Evan Pilato always put out great work, and they are stalwarts of the movement, which is trying to inform and truly educate, truly wake people up with actual verifiable information that you don't have to just take on faith. You can actually go and investigate and read about and look into yourself. So Corbett always provides the links, always provides the documents for you to go and check out, and satiate your own curiosity and test out your own incredulity. You should be incredulous about this stuff, right? But when you start seeing the dots that I'm connecting here, you got to start looking into it, asking questions, and satisfy your own curiosity by doing some learning and research. Another Corbett Report article is the Green Revolution Exposed. So this is the Gates and Rockefeller Green Revolution scam exposed. So this is more recent, but I just wanted to read a little bit from the intro to tell you a little. This is more big picture stuff about this push for eco-zealotry. You got to hand it to the globalists. They know how to take advantage of our better instincts. They have designed an entire international institutional infrastructure around the issues that the average non-psychopath cares about. Helping the poor and the downtrodden, caring for children, ending inequities and taking care of the planet, etc. This is why Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, just released his report on Our Common Agenda, which purports to provide a roadmap for rebuilding our world and mending the trust in one another we need so desperately at this moment in history. Not because he actually cares about saving the world, of course, but because he knows that we do, and that many people can be persuaded to make sacrifices up to and including relinquishing their personal sovereignty, as this report ultimately calls for the greater good. So this is why the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and a gaggle of their big agri cronies are teaming up in billion-dollar alliance to elevate the single coordinated African voice in a United Nations summit on food security in Africa. Not because they care about feeding starving African children or raising up poor African farmers, but because they know that we do. Specifically, the Gates-Rockefeller big ag monstrosity known as the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, which is AGRA for short, and their associated fundraising vehicle, the African Green Revolution Forum, or AGRIF, is seeking to elevate the single coordinated African voice at the UN Food System Summit in New York this week. But as the Alliance for Food Safety in Africa, or AFSA, these are getting a bit silly, aren't they, these acronyms, and literally dozens of other groups are pointing out, the agri-promoted approach to farming, monocultural commodity production heavily reliant on chemical inputs, is great for big agribusiness corporations who make up the agri-alliance, but terrible for actual African farmers, not to mention terrible for long-term soil fertility and human development. Yeah, there it is, right on the money. And this article is really in-depth, long, and detailed, so I would encourage and gently suggest that you get in there and read it and look at it, because these are the big players, the Bill Gates, the Rockefellers, the foundations, the philanthropists. They tell you they're doing one thing and they're doing the opposite, and this is absolutely right. Yes, of course, we need to take better care of the planet and we need better farming methods, but those exist in the term of regenerative farm regenerative farming, which includes cows and livestock grazing naturally in open spaces in the environment that they are designed to live in, not cages, not factory farms, not disgusting conditions, right? They're not supposed to be tortured. They're supposed to be living a life free in their herds, comfortable, relaxed, outdoors in nature, eating grass, and that they contribute to that cycle of regenerating the soil. And the topsoil is where we get all our nutrients from when we grow vegetables. That topsoil needs to be maintained through a steady supply of grazing animals waste. And that is like the circle of life, right? When you start to use monocultured crops that are sprayed with chemicals to grow them over these vast tracts of land, you ruin and destroy the topsoil. It becomes dead and lifeless, and you have to reinvigorate that topsoil with artificially produced chemicals and fertilizers. And then you become hooked on this cycle of needing massive companies and corporations to produce these artificial fertilizers to use to, so if you want to cut all that stuff out, all that nonsense out, then you go to regenerative farmers. You get people who are actually improving the quality of their land by farming on it regeneratively, not just sustainably. Sustainability is a con, right? You don't want to sustain. Look at what we've got now. What we've got now is a lot of bullshit. You don't want to sustain what we've got now. We want to regenerate what we've got. Our systems and our cultures and our communities. We want to regenerate them into something better, that is fairer, that is more enjoyable and more based on love and harmony and cooperation and coherence than lies and division and hatred and chemical shit, right? Because that's what they're trying to do. So, Daily Skeptic, another final article here. I was going to read this whole thing because it's really, really fantastic, powerful article, but I'll just pop it in the links for you to have a look at. But this really, that little rant that I just gave, this is summed up really nicely in this article by Dr. David Bell, very recent one. The sinister public health agenda is just getting started. So it's a really good one, and it talks about how this whole thing is being done by manipulating people's better instinct. Like it said in the last article that James Corbett said, people care about things being good for other people, right? And that is what's hijacked, and then sort of steered into a dead end, or steered into the solutions which are provided by big corporations and big companies, and the collusion between those corporations and the politicians. They collude together, and they have the revolving door at the top, and they push those solutions, even though nobody wants them, even though they don't work, even though they rely on slave labor, even though they rely on a reduction in living standards for most people by 85%, more taxes on poor people, and more attacks upon small and medium business owners. That is the outcome of all this, and it's being done in the name of the greater good. It's being done in the name of society and the community. It's communitarianism, or communism in other words, where the small group of wealthy people at the top who have power and influence consolidate more of that for themselves, take more of that from you and me and the people we love and care about, who are just scrabbling to pay for everyday things that we need as the price rockets up, all in the name of saving the planet. Scientism at its best. So that is my little rant for the end of this episode. There's one more thing that I want to show you, and I said this, and I said the end point of all of this stuff, as they're trying to push it out, is to have fewer humans, is to get rid of people. That is the end goal of all this, to get rid of a bunch of people, because we don't need them anymore, because we've got machines and robots and AI and technology and software that can run most things. And so if we can get rid of some of these like dirty, sort of uneducated, like horrible, icky people, we can have more for ourselves. We can have more land for ourselves, more space for ourselves. We can buy more islands, we can buy more property, and we can enjoy the world in our luxury yachts and our luxury private jets, flying around, patting ourselves on the back, saying what a good job we've done because we got rid of most people, right? And that is the end result of environmentalism. If you are not working on, you got to empower people to work on land, to grow food, to keep animals. That is true environmentalism, right? It's farming. It's regenerative farming is true environmentalism, right? Paper straws, plastic bags,
electric cars, smart meters, that is all fake environmentalism. That is technocracy control over your life to make your life shit in the name of scientism, in the name of the greater good. That's what that is. That is all fake, it's all false. True environmentalism is regenerative farming, right? Growing food, growing vegetables, organic food, organic meat, animal foods and milks, cheeses, these kind of things, honey, all of that is part of the correct natural human diet that people thrive on. And you can see that it's not hard to find, but you don't get that in the mainstream. The mainstream gives you shit, fake versions of everything that are always inverted and upside down and inside out. And you can kind of understand what the correct thing to do is by just doing the opposite of whatever you're being told in the mainstream. And just if you don't believe me, I got one final article to show you before I wrap it up. This was published 13th of December, which is 2 days ago, and tells us that now scientists say breathing is bad for the environment. Gases we exhale contribute to 0.1% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions. So they're even now attacking your God-given right to breathe. A new study claims the gases in air exhaled from human lungs is fueling global warming. I mean, this is not even satire. I saw the headline. I thought that's got to be fake. It's actually here on the Mail Online. There you go. Science and tech. And that's not even accounting for the gas we release from burps and farts or emissions that come from our skin without us noticing. Exhaled human breath can contain small, elevated concentrations of methane and nitrous oxide. We would urge caution in the assumption that emissions from humans are negligible. So there you have it. Right there. They're out in the open, plain as day. The problem is there's too many humans breathing. We need to get rid of humans in the name of saving the planet, saving Gaia, worshipping, do not kill the water herself and the air hisself and all this stuff, right? So that is me. I'm done. Just in 2 hours. Wow. I can't believe I got through all that in 2 hours. I was speaking at rapid pace. So thank you for being here. I'm not going to push the links. You know, there's links underneath the video that you can explore that will help you learn and educate yourself, get to grips with the big picture, learn some skills that can move you forward in life, help you start a business, help you get a raise, help you build communities, relationships, all that good stuff is down there. Please have a look and consider clicking and reading and learning. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to make a donation to my show. There's an Instagram account. There's a Telegram account. All sorts of good stuff down there. I'm losing my voice because I've been talking for too fast for too long. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Sincere thank you for being here, spending your time with me. It's precious, and I hope you have gained some value. If you like what I've done here today and the picture that I've been painting, please send it to someone who you think may also benefit from learning about these things. And good luck out there. And, you know, don't stop breathing. Obviously, don't stop breathing. Breathe more. In fact, learn about Wim Hof. Get some conscious breathing activities going on. Let's turn this thing around and call it out for the bullshit nonsense that it is, and get some real regenerative action going on. Let's regenerate our culture and our families and our communities and ourselves, and let's just tell all these maniacs to fuck off. That's my final message for you today.